tips on your relationships, you can always talk to us on our social media platforms at 22047 TV47KE. Our question of the day this particular morning: do you support the 2-year marriage contract proposed by the Atheist Society of Kenya? We'll be taking a look at what you're telling us. Quite a number of feedback on Facebook right about now. And this particular morning, last week we were talking about casual dating. It was a whole, conversation, and even for the Gen Zs and millennials, really tapping into this. Well, I included. But then this particular morning, we shift gears and talk about long-term commitments. And what is the secret, really, for this long-term commitment? And on set, I have a couple. For 27 years, they've been married. Yes, 27 years. Uko pale umekuwa na mtu 6 months, unasema, nipe glucose. I am tired of this. But anyway, let me introduce them real quick. Pastor Samuel and Rehab Mutonga. Karibuni sana.
Asante.
It's very interesting because on Friday last week, I was with your kids.
Yes.
The 6 of them.
Yeah.
And we had an amazing time. They have melodious voices, by the way. I think they get that from you.
Yes. It started with someone. Yes.
No, I'm curious. Can you, give us something from your melodious voices?
A chorus or something?
Oh yeah, chorus. To start this morning fresh.
Mkono wako unaweza.
Okay.
Mkono wako unaweza Baba. Mkono wako unaweza Yawe. Ukinyosha mkono wako, yote yawezekana. Unaweza Baba. Unaweza Yawe. Ukinyosha mkono wako, kweli yote yawezekana.
Ooh, wonderful. What a way to start this particular morning. When we wrap it up, you'll also be having a short chorus. Yes. So I have prepared both of you, mentally, visually.
Yes.
But anyway, let's, start this particular conversation. And I'm curious, 27 years.
Yes.
Oof. What's the secret? I'll start with you.
The secret is God.
There's no other...
I wouldn't say anything else. It is God.
From the word go, or hapo katikati, that's where you start, looking for the formula. It has to be there, Pasi. Like from the word go, you have to...
Marriage is a journey that we don't know exactly where we are headed to. So we begin from a position of not understanding how the journey will be.
Mm-hmm.
But the good news is we have a wisdom that is above every other wisdom to keep and sustain marriage. And as my wife is saying, the secret is God. I want to just expound a bit. Yes, how God? It is the wisdom of God. The wisdom of God is the manual that guides us into how we can manage our marriage through the knowledge that He has released to us. Family is an interesting thing because it crosses across all generations, all cultures, all faiths. Everybody comes from a family.
Okay.
And the differences you see among families is the wisdom that establishes and keeps that marriage.
Right.
For our case, the wisdom is God. And we can be able to demonstrate for His glory that a family can stand guided by the wisdom of God.
Right.
That's the secret behind it.
Now, the fact that you have really rightfully put that, and talking about how the whole formula is, and so I had a conversation with the president of the Atheist Society of Kenya, Harrison Mumia, yesterday. So the Atheist Society of Kenya is proposing a 2-year marriage contract. So thereafter, well, the couple can, actually review this. But then let's hear from the source's mouth. Let's take a look at and listen to this particular phone call conversation with the president of the Atheist Society of Kenya. To form this particular conversation, we'll be getting into that, Director Inondoneza Nisho, when we have it on that. But then, even before we actually listen into this, this brings out a whole conversation of, well, the young generation right now have embraced, and the society really has embraced, casual dating as is. Do you think this is eroding what, the whole getting into a long-term relationship and getting into the long-term commitments?
Yes, it is. It is eroding because family has been there. It's existed. So, and we cannot change what has been there. And as we are saying, we know that the author of family is God. So we cannot bring our human wisdom. And I think the best thing that we can do is to follow, as Pastor Samuel is saying, the wisdom of God. Because if we do otherwise, then it shows that we are not interested even in our nation. Because we know for a nation to stand, the family has to be standing. Mm-hmm. So when we are doing things like temporal, what are we thinking about our nation? We have been born, we have found Kenya still there. How about if those parents who were there before, they never followed this path of establishing strong families? How would it have been? How about if they just lived casually, like we want to do it now? How will it be? How would it be now? Mm-hmm. Today we are enjoying a beautiful nation. We are enjoying a beautiful society. So I think people should not be selfish, because when people are making decisions, they're just being selfish. It's about themselves, and they're not understanding that there's a future.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe to add on top of that, we are living in a world of opinions. And I don't have a problem with anyone's opinion. I would have a problem if someone is imposing things on people. But if it is a proposal, it is okay. Mm-hmm. By the end of the day, time will judge what is right and what is wrong.
Okay.
As I've just said, families come from different cultures, faiths, and so on. Mm-hmm. And that's how we find families are not all the same. They're different. But if you are keen to observe, you will get to know what is that right family as you would desire. Look at the wisdom that is behind establishing such a family. When we talk of contracts, we are talking of something completely different from family as in the mind of the author. It is not a contract, it is a covenant. If we have to realize the purpose of family, we have to understand for what need did God establish a family. It is for continuity and for his own purpose and for his wisdom to be carried throughout generations. If we make it a contract, or anyone chooses to make it a contract, then there shall be consequences. My point is that those who are carrying the necessary wisdom as pertains things of matters family must arise and give counsel. Right. And especially to our children, because they are the target. Right now, we see and we can see there is a big challenge. It has not just happened. It is a process. It began long time ago, and it is still continuing to grip in and eating up the virtuousness that is an inheritance for our children. Right. We must arise and guard it, right. Not forcefully, because it's matters of opinions and faith. So we have choices, but we must remember that there are consequences.
Right.
If a nation is to stand, then families must stand.
Right. Let's listen into this particular phone call by, or rather, that I had with the president of the Atheist Society of Kenya, Harrison Mumia, on this particular conversation, the 2-year marriage contract. We'll be right back.
Yeah, my name is Harrison Mumia. I am the president of the Atheists in Kenya Society.
So yesterday you released a press statement, proposing to have, have the renewable marriage contracts Could you enlighten us on this?
Yeah. So normally marriages traditionally have been based on the idea that when you come together, it is until death do you part. We've seen these vows being made, in churches, places of worship. And then you go to the Attorney General, you sign a certificate, and that certificate is a legal document, a binding document showing that the two of you are married. Now, the only way out of marriages has been through a divorce, both in Christianity, Islam, whether it is through the law, you have to go through a divorce. And that is very painful for a lot of people, very painful, because it is initiated by either of the parties. And it happens mostly when the relationship has become, impossible for either of the parties.
Mm-hmm.
To save people from all that pain, it is good that we consider renewable marriage contracts. And the advantage is that, number one, you are saying that we are not going to be together forever. There is a chance that after 1 or 2 years, I could be feeling differently. You could be feeling differently about the relationship. Maybe what I thought the relationship was going to be about is not happening.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe our vision or our goal for the marriage is not. We are not on the same page.
Okay.
So it then becomes much easier to ask yourself after every 2 years, are we on the same page as a couple? If we embrace such kind of renewable marriages, it will be much, much easier for couples to part ways or even say, let us continue the relationship. And if you keep renewing it, then it provides an easier way out without a lot of drama. By the time you're saying, I don't think we are on the same page. 2 years ago, I felt this way. Now I don't think we are on the same page. Then it becomes much easier to just say, okay, let us just nullify this marriage after 2 years. So what we are proposing is for the Marriage Act not to be until divorce,
Right.
but for the Marriage Act to be based on a 2-year renewable contract. And also it works also when it comes to properties and the roles.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think one party is being unfair, even in terms of, like mostly you find in most marriages, ladies, sometimes they do a lot of roles within the house.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody feels this is too much for me, again, that is also another advantage.
Right.
If the gentleman has investments and maybe he feels, no, I don't want to share this with my partner, new investments within the 2 years.
Okay.
And maybe the marriage is not, working out well. That is where the 2-year contract for marriage comes in, and it's gonna be really beautiful
Right.
for a lot of people.
My final question to you before I let you go: do you think this might water down and dissolve the whole idea of Christian and traditional marriages where bride price is brought forth with, and in the period of marriage, for example, a couple has been together for, let's say, 30 years, the bride price is paid to the girl's family for this period of let's say 30 years, and this is just tip of the iceberg. A couple of factors that really bring the whole traditional marriage.
Yeah.
Do you think having now this 2-year contract might just water down and have it solely just as a 2-year contract, and when you're done, we're done?
Yeah. Traditionally, dowry is given as a way of appreciation to the parents that they raised the lady well. Normally, that's what happens. So you're taking the lady, and you have to give something to the parents. Personally, I think marriage still remains a contract. As far as a society, we are opposed to the idea of dowry payment.
Okay.
Because dowry payment, it makes marriage become about, I am being given somebody, I have to give somebody to the parents and something to the parents in return. So for us, I think marriage is just a contract, really, between two people who decide to come together, live together, start a family, have responsibilities towards the family, whether it is children, having property. Now, that contract cannot be forever because normally a lot of things could go wrong. So I think for us, dowry does not really come in. Dowry is actually a very outdated practice, which we think should not be practiced anymore.
Right.
What people should do is look at marriage as a contract. It is a contract. The question which we are debating is whether it should be a long-term, until death do you part contract,
Right.
or it should be a renewable contract. So we are proposing as a society that it should be a renewable contract that will make life much easier. And by the way, just take into account that there are so many divorces going on there on the rise. A lot of single mothers have been in marriage. They came out, after realizing it's not working.
Right.
And under these circumstances, we 2-year renewable contracts are going to really help a lot of couples.
And before I let you go, just a follow-up on the same. I mean, you mentioned the whole divorce, and in marriage, in most marriages, children are a huge factor when it comes to even the secret, because even as you're going to have this conversation, I'd find most people, with the argument that, so where do these children go even after the 2-year contract? Because, well, as much as maybe in the 2 years you didn't really have children, but then children came into place. Do you think this might really now affect the children who are in this family really more?
Yeah. Just like any contract. So once you get into a marriage, of course, one of the things you have agreed to get children. When putting down the roles you're going to play, you have to agree that you're going to get children, both of you. And when you get children, it's obviously a responsibility. So after the 2 years, the expectation is that you are going to discuss. In fact, during the termination, if you terminate the contract after 2 years, then of course you are also saying conversation has to take place around who goes with the children. So just like any other contract, you have to agree on when you're reviewing it. If you're terminating it, then how do you go around the termination? There's property, there's children, there is a lot of other things. Everybody was playing a role, and how do we end this without a lot of drama?
Right.
The point here is 2 years renewable contract allows especially the mother and the father of the children to evaluate. Because assuming you have somebody who is, you expected them to play a role when the children come,
Okay.
and they're not playing a role. You want to review after 2 years, is this the kind of husband that you want?
Right.
Is it the kind of father that you wanted for the child? Are you comfortable with somebody who is just irresponsible?
Right.
So after 2 years, you bring everything on the table and you review and you say, is this working? You say no. Now, for the children, this is what I want. And that really just clears everything out.
Right. Harrison Mumia, thank you for talking to us. Right, there you have it, that particular conversation with President of the Society of Kenya, Harrison Mumia. And well, even before during that particular bit, having a whole conversation with the Samuels here, yes, and saying, well, okay, I mean, is he entirely wrong, though?
Yes, that's wrong. And I think that should...
as I've said, marriage and family is about God. We can choose to take it for ourselves, as what happened in the Garden of Eden, as we read from the scriptures. God created everything for himself and for his own service. Marriage is one of them, because God desired something. What I'm saying simply is, there is a lot of talk of people who want to escape their responsibility. They are looking for comfort rather than committing themselves to the responsibility that is before them. Mm-hmm. The convenience, the peace, the good that we seek in our marriages, we cultivate. We must cultivate, because that is a command. And why do we cultivate? because there is what we are looking for, an environment whereby we can be able to bring up our children in godliness. Every word I speak is wisdom that is in the scriptures. And as I said, if we want to give it a test, let us go ahead. And after some time, we will come and judge and see which one works best. If we want stable societies, if we want stable institutions, if we want a stable church, if we want everything stable, then we must work with the wisdom that is bringing up results. So what this idea is bringing is targeted to destroy the institution of family.
Right.
We read even in between lines. We know that wisdom is, I don't know what word I would use, but I never listened to every word. The first few statements, I understood where this man is coming from and what is his target.
Though, and I love the fact that you talk about how, I mean, the opinions, and we are entitled to actually listen to them, not entirely actually follow them. And remember, you can always tap into this conversation on our socials. On Facebook, Ward Ochol says it should start by signing the contract. And Catalyst Cable says, I'm atheist, but 2 years is too long. Just a night is enough, then everyone minds his or her business. And Caster Judy, make it 6 months, 2 is eternity. And this is just a tip of the iceberg of what the society really thinks about. In the Christian realm, there are divorces. As much as even in the beginning of this conversation, both of you are really stamping the authority, saying that follow the God's will. I mean, it really has to, follow God's will so that, you actually see quite a number of years in the marriage. But then there are those who are, following the God's will. Well, they'd say they're Christians, Rehab, but then there are divorces. So what the Atheist Society really is bringing forth to the table is, to avoid these divorces, let's have a contractual, a form here. Do you think the whole, Christian idea can actually, borrow some ideas, not entirely really, but then borrow the whole idea of it?
Not at all, not at all. When you ask me the secret behind our marriage, and I said God, I would expound further and I say that it is God, bringing God in our home. That is the secret. As Christians, we go to church every Sunday. And there is some little more thing that we can do. Whatever we are doing in the church, we bring it in the house. Praying together, sharing the word of God together. Parents teaching their children, So this way, it brings family together, and we are talking out of experience. Let me tell you, we've been married for 27 years. Our first 5 years, we were not really committed Christians. And I know the path that we had taken with Samuel. That path would not have led what now we have today. But we can see the difference. When we gave our lives to Christ, got committed in God, and now the wisdom that we got to parent 6 children, you are saying you had them on Friday, bringing God back home. And this is what we are getting out as a family, encouraging families that let us not just be committed in church, let us be committed in our homes. Let us bring God back in our home. Because when we go to church, this is what we always say, that churches are like a petrol station. We go, we hear the word, we are empowered, we are equipped. So we get back now as parents, and now we teach our children the word of God. We pray together. This has been the strength or the pillar in our family. So in my understanding and from what I have looked and seen the difference, why maybe Christians, they are divorcing. You will see back at home, there is no commitment with God. Yes.
And I love the fact that you brought up the whole children's conversation, because I was going there.
Yes.
And allow me to put both of you on the spot here.
Yes.
As parents, 6 amazing children. But then, if the children were not in the picture, Because I mean, the marriages that they've been, let's say even in 10 years, but then there are no kids.
Yes.
You know, they're really trying, they're really hopeful, but then there are no kids. This definitely changes the dynamics of this marriage, because again, children really, you know, are a huge factor. So, Pascal, I'll ask you this: if the kids, I mean, for both of you, if the kids were not in the picture, it was just both of you, will it have been 27 years?
Yeah, kindly allow me to say this before I engage that, because you left me burning. There is no way you can bring a wrong to correct a wrong. You cannot come to water down an institution that is established by the wisdom of God just to take care of divorces, which is a bigger crime, to sin against God or to come and prevent people from divorcing. So I think both of them are wrongs. Give us a better idea, and then we shall listen. There was a time the Pharisees came to Jesus, and they argued with him because he was teaching against divorce. And they said, yes, we hear you, but then why did Moses allow us to divorce and give a certificate of divorce for that matter? And Jesus answered and said, it is because of the hardness of your hearts that Moses allowed. Otherwise, it was not the will of God from the beginning. All these you are hearing about is that as a result of hardness of hearts of men. God is merciful. He will look at them and have mercy upon them. That probably one day their hearts will be softened and they will have to understand the mercies and faithfulness of God and his purpose and obey him.
But then,
Now,
even as you continue, let's even put the whole conversation of children aside, because I know you're still banning on the whole divorce issue. I mean, fine, you're quoting, you know, the Pharisees, you know, that type. But then, right now, it is a whole, a new generation kind of society. So, if you're going to be advising the new, let's say, even the Gen Z millennial parents, or rather, you know, couples, you know, getting into, you know, Christian marriages, getting into, you know, this, you know, whole institution, the practicality of it right now.
I will come to that. On the issue of the children, there is grace. If there is understanding of what it is that we are into, we don't get all that we desire to get in this world. There are many things we would be wanting to have today, but we don't have. But we know of the grace of God. I do not say that it would have been easy for me to live for 27 years in marriage without children. It's not easy. But I know there is grace. And I thank God because he chose to give me those children, and I rejoice in them. To come to this point, the power of God is able to do all things. Even in this era of whatever we may think of us and our children and what the systems have made us to be, the power of God is still there. And it is able to work against every force that may try to raise itself against the will of God. It is not about where we are, what we are into. It is about the power of God. The fact that you see things are as they are, it is because they have gone through a process. If we reverse the process, 10 years, 20 years from now, you will see things working. And that's why we are making this campaign and call that the simple answer to all these problems is return to God. That is where the wisdom is. That's where the power is to establish and fill the gap that we are seeing today. We cannot dwell on the gap that we are seeing and giving that as an excuse for us to do all that we feel like we should do. This life does not belong to us. That is why we have not tarried here for eternity. A time will come, we shall not be here, and we shall give an account neither did we choose to leave. We found ourselves here because there is a master that has given us that life.
Right.
And at a given time, he will take it back. But we will have to account for every moment that we have lived.
Right.
Now, we shall see whether you lived for yourself, you lived for others, or you lived for the one who rented this life to you. It is not ours. Once we understand and acknowledge that, we shall get ourselves out of so many battles that we are fighting within, in our hearts and in our minds.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Rahab, do you think a marriage could really last more than even 10 years, 20 years, actually last long without children involved?
Yes, as Pastor Samuel is saying, there is grace. You know, in marriage, it's not just about children. You know, when you are talking about that issue, there are many things, even like finances. And like in our case, yes, we have children, but we have been in a moment where we had a business and it came down and we were left without anything. And our house was auctioned, all that we had. We lost everything. So there is the grace of God. So when you see us here, it's not been a bed of roses. It's been stormy. But as I'm saying, when you have God, he gives you wisdom. How do you handle a storm? Because people go through different afflictions. So in one family, it will be like we are talking about, lack of not having children. In others, maybe like in our case, the way business went down, our business was burnt down. In others, maybe it's sickness, all that. So there is grace that takes people through. And that's what we are saying. You cannot make it without God. Because in our case, how would we have made it, even with our six children? Well, you know, you are used to a very good life. We had our beautiful house. Then all of a sudden, we are homeless. We've been in the streets of Nairobi without a home. We've been sleeping hungry for some times. You know, what is this? Where did we draw this strength? It is from God. So whether you have a child, whether you have what, there is the grace of God that keeps the family. Yes.
Right, and I know, Pastor, you're itching to tap into that. But then just a reminder also on our question of the day, you can always talk to us on our social media platforms and Facebook. There's a poll actually there. Do you support the 2-year marriage contract by the proposal by the Atheist Society of Kenya? There's a whole yes, no, or rather you don't really care about it. We'll be taking a look at how this particular poll voting will be continuing. So Pasi, even as you chiming in into what she's talking about, she was also saying that for the first 5 years, things were a little different. And even as you talk to even now the new, a new couple, trying to get into this institution, do you set up, let's say like rules and regulations, or you draft up how the 20 years or the next 10 years will be looking like for both of you, so that maybe after 10 years we need to audit how this marriage has been, or just you just let it flow? How do you do these things? Advise us, please.
I want to speak candidly and say that that's where we go wrong. We create a list of expectations that we are not sure about. Who knows that 10 years you'll be living?
But is it wrong to because even in our lives we have,
because it will give you dreams that if you do not achieve, you will tend to think otherwise. What I'm saying is, I don't need to draw anything because it is already drawn. What I'm saying is, God who called men into marriage has spoken so much about marriage. I'll bless you. I'll bless the seed of your womb. I'll bless you with children. If you obey my commandments, I will do this, I will do that. Even if you walk through fire, I will be with you. Even if you walk through waters, I'll be with you. So when I come through problems, I remember God is still with me, and I encourage myself. And I'm looking forward to see these blessings of God manifesting in my life. So my entire conscience is focused on God and his promises. If today you say that next year I will have bought this and that, and you fail to do it, if you are simple-hearted, you may even contemplate suicide. And that's why you're seeing these things are happening. Why? Because people are not informed. They are not knowledgeable. They don't have the capacity even to withstand the smallest waves of life.
And I love the fact that you brought that up, because I was not getting to that.
Yes.
Knowledgeable. The Gen Z and millennials right now getting into casual dating, and probably, I mean, both of you have heard, from the comments saying 2 years is even long. Let's even make it 6 months. I'm with you for 6 months and we review it. This brings about the whole knowledge of it. And people would argue that, back in the day, even for your generation, the parents and people around you really will mentor you, even before you get into that particular space. If it is for the girl child, probably your aunties will more shape you into getting into the whole marriage institution. If it is for the boy child, the uncles, fathers, the grandfather will be giving you some tips. They'll probably not even say it, but then you just looking at them, you see, okay, this is how they're doing it. Right now, do you feel like there is that kind of knowledge? Is this society, and even the Gen Z, millennials, are they lacking this kind of knowledge?
Yes, they are lacking. There's a gap, there's a crisis. I would say the way our parents brought us up, first they had value for marriage, they had value for family, and even the way they brought us up, even by default, the parents will not necessarily they are training you to become responsible. But the duties that you were given, they made you, and even how they lived. And I would say that now, we said the generation, especially now our age, the firstborns, because there's a certain age there that we have observed, and it's come now dripping down to from 60s there. They say they don't want to bring up their children the way they were brought up, we won't discipline, there's just like what you're hearing, many different opinions. And we can see that, like Sam is saying, we can now judge the results. We can see what has happened, because we saw like those parents, they were in error, when they were doing whatever they were doing. Like, you are working, you have money, so if I have girls, I have 4 girls, that now I don't want them to work, because I'm in a position to employ a house manager, and they are not washing clothes. And these are people now who are going to get married. So there is a crisis. There's a crisis because of their upbringing, and also lack of mentors. So there's a crisis.
So who's at fault here, per se?
Now,
is it you as parents that, as she's saying, instead of kumwambia osha nguo zako za wiki mzima, mama relax, mama relax, kuna mboch, atosha.
We shall talk about that. I am asking myself questions. If today I choose to remain with my wife for 2 days, and after that I call it quits, what business do you have in that? And I have a choice to make, it's my will. Who is it that is being told to make it 6 months? About what? If I choose to divorce today, no one will stop me, because I'm exercising my own free will as God has given to me. As I said, families are formed through different wisdoms across cultures. And we said, if it is your opinion, exercise it, speak it, if you have space, like what we are speaking. Then it's not a subject that we put on the table, we discuss and agree. It's your own opinion, you can move with it, but make an appeal where you are able to make that appeal. Now, to come to this question, yes, there has been a problem. The whole purpose of family in the mind of God, if we want to look at the greatest work or duty, is parenting.
Right.
We parent so that our children may become parents tomorrow, to carry on the viable ideas that we have about our community, about our nation, about our church, about our organization. So if we fail to capacitate, to equip these children, they will be wanting.
Right.
And that's exactly what we are staring at. Because someone missed to do their duties some years back.
Right.
And we are seeing what we are seeing.
But see,
and this is what I said.
I'll request you to hold that thought. Yes. I want us to cross over to Nakuru, Naivasha specifically. We'll also be linking up with our Laikipia correspondent a little bit later on. But our boots on ground in Naivasha, where Dennis Njiru is on ground for this particular conversation, the whole 2-year marriage contract, as well as the whole long-term commitments. Willie Dennis Njiru, Syria kukaa kwa ndoa this long, ni nini according to watu wa Naivasha?
Asante sana, Stanley Nyaringita. Thank you very much indeed. As you can see behind me is just men and men alone. Women are not subject to this matter. And men behind me say that financial constraints are a big impediment towards sustaining family issues. And just before I pass over to them, I allowed your guest in the studios that marriage was consecrated by God. And we have this in the book of Genesis. When we go to Proverbs 14 to 16, we also have the do's, the pros and cons on how a woman should be able to handle this. And when we first go to 1 Corinthians 7, it still encourages man in regards to factors marriage. And we must respect the fact that it was consecrated by God. And when he said, the two will become one, and the book of Malachi 2 says that the big secret as to why God put these two together is that they could have godly children. And as such, we have Naivasha locals here are going to be telling us much about this. Ndugu, nieleze jina lako na utueleze shida ya ndoa ya siku hizi ni nini?
Jina langu naitwa Joho, jina ofisi. Mmesikia tukiongelea kuhusu marriages. Mimi kwangu sina mengi, lakini naweza bonga tu kitu moja ama mbili. Saizi unajua kama marriages, saizi warembo wa saizi hawataki kupata mtu kama mimi ni hustler kwa hii stage. Hawataki kukuja tujenge hiyo doa. Wanataka kupata kitu nimeinvest, hata kama hajui mahali imetoka, anataka tu apate kitu, yani apate tu wewe uko tu na mongo cho kila time. Sasa mimi nitabonga tu hiyo, sina mengi.
Asante. Wacha tusikie kutoka kwa mwingine. Ndugu, shida ya ndoa ni nini? Siku hizi hai survive sana na kushikia mic.
Kwa jina yangu naitwa Peter Geshero na mimi nimeoa tayari, lakini naona ndoa mingi zinafujika juu wasichana wetu walipenda pesa kuliko mapenzi. Unapata hata bibi anakuambia kwa nyumba, kwani jirani yangu alinunua pikipiki wewe ukifanya nini? Sasa unapata hata unapotelea kwa pombe juu hiyo kiwango ya kufikishia kununua hiyo pikipiki anataka ununue huwezi. Unapata msichana mdogo anapush na mzee hata dedika ya baba yake. Sasa naona ndoa za siku hizi zinamalizwa na pesa. Wasichana wetu walipenda pesa kuliko mapenzi. Hii ndio shida hii.
Sasa kwa sababu Mungu anasema muishi pamoja hadi kifo. Na sasa inafika mahali ndoa inavunjika. Na hicho bado kifo. Itakuwaje?
Mambo na kifo siku hizi na generation yenye tuko hakuna mahali ati kupeleka mpaka kifo. Hapa ni pesa. Kama una pesa mau apelekea nyuki. Mapesa ya siku hizi ni pesa. Sina la kusema lingine, labda ndugu yangu.
Asante, wacha tusikie kutoka kwa ndugu hapa. Njoo karibu, nieleze tu mawili matatu. Ndugu, una yapi ya kusema kuhusiana na hili? Ndoa hazisurvive siku hizi.
Sasa hizi mapenzi ni pesa na wasichana wa siku hizi wanataka ready made life. Sasa wanataka wakute umetafuta pesa. Hawataki kuanza maisha pale chini, wanataka wakute umejinawiri. Alafu tena marriage zina fail juu ya in-laws. Interference ya in-laws sana. Msichana anaulizwa na mamake, kwani ulioleka wapi? Hakuna pesa. In-laws wameinterfere sana. Ni hayo tu kwa sasa.
Asante, wacha tusikie kwa mwingine hapa ndugu. Jina lako. Unfortunately, we don't have ladies around here to give out their comments. Yeah, what do you have to say about this issue?
Issue yangu mimi naitwa Martin Nyongesa. Issue yangu ni kulingana venye kusema ati wanaume atuoe, vijana atuoe. Maisha pia
ndoa zinavunjika sana.
Ndoa zinavunjika ndio maisha, anajua pia maisha pia yanachangia. Maisha iko juu. Alafu siku hizi sasa sisi kama sisi vijana sasa tunatembelea kwa mama, juu mama wanaelewa kuliko wasichana.
Lakini kuna kitu cha understanding. Biblia inazungumzia wakati mwingi kwa Biblia umpende mke wako waheshimu mumewe, na mambo haya hayazingatiwi kutoka kwa pande zote mbili, kando na kanuni zingine nyingi tu ambazo zinamueleza mtu jinsi ya kuishi na mkeo na jinsi mke anavyofaa kuishi na mumewe. Msipozingatia kanuni hizi kabla hata mjaanza kusema mambo ya hela, itakuwaje?
Najua hela ndio kila kitu.
Mapenzi kwanza ndio mwisho.
Hapana, mapenzi bila hela si mapenzi. Utalisha mwenzako mapenzi na una hela.
But there was no money when God put man together.
Huwezi lisha mwenzako mapenzi, lazima kuwe na pesa ndio mwenzako akupende. Utapendwa bure, wewe si pendwa bure. Hata ukipendwa bure unapendwa tu leo yenye utakukura yenye leo, kesho achisoti.
Sasa si mwenzako amesema kwamba mapenzi ni kuvumiliana, na hili lisipofanyika.
Hapana, mwenye alisema mapenzi ni kuvumiliana alikosa. Ndoa ni kufurahiana. Ndoa si kuvumiliana.
Takutia changamoto. Wazazi wetu walienda mtoni kuteka maji. Leo hii wale mabibi wako wanatumia tap. Si kweli? Kina mama zetu walienda msituni kutafuta kuni. Leo hii unaingia tu kwa duka unachukua gas. Walivumilia yale maisha. Walivumilia kulalia vitanda vingine vimetengenezwa na mipira. Leo hii wanalalia vya mbao na vikuku.
Hata kitambo kulikuwa na kwa kuja akasema tukapiga kura ya kusema kuna inaitwaje? Kutoka kitambo tukuje kisasa. Sasa unaona kitambo kulikuwa na TV. Uko na TV unasimiwa kwako. Sinabidi uende sasa uchukue recorder ndio ukuje ione. Na ni yako. Wanakusimia kiwa kwako na room wanakusimia kwako.
Asante, wacha tumalizie na mwingine hapa. Ndugu, songea tu karibu nieleza mawili matatu tu. Asante. Stanley, there you had it from the locals here in Naivasha, but sadly we didn't have any female to just give their view or opinion, side of their story in matters regarding the whole issue about what God put together. Just as my parting shot, you remember that man was lonely. Then God saw it well to put this woman together to be a principal helper. And when God was saying that no man should separate these two, there was no any other man apart from those two that God had put together. But he had foreseen that in the future, a disruption of divorces will come in place and would be precipitated by man. That is why God said that let no man separate these two until death do us part. Until death. But other things that affiliate in the word of God stipulate that there are do's and don'ts, what a man should do and a woman should do, so that you can be able to survive this institution. Remember, Stanley, you and me, in those days we could not just have let our parents know that somebody has bought you anything outside there, and our parents were very strict in ensuring that nobody gets you any goodie outside there. That some of these things have befallen our little and young girls and boys, and they have fallen prey to what we are seeing now on news here and there. It is our opinion that maybe we could just integrate the systems as they were in our cultural values to ensure that at least we quell some of these issues that are befalling the society. That is it from me here, Stanley in Naivasha. I take it back to you in our studios in Nairobi.
All right, asante sana Willie Dennis Njiru. The Samuels right here smiling and clapping their hands after,
Yes.
Okay, you have the chance to even clap for Willie Dennis. He was quoting a couple of Bible verses.
Yes.
And even as he was continuing, I was pursuing like...
He quoted Malachi 2:15. That is the gist of all this. God created man and woman, blessed them, and commanded them to multiply, be fruitful, and subdue. That is in Genesis. Why did God do that? Malachi 2:15 explains it. Because God desired a godly offspring. That's why we have spoken and said, it is the responsibility of that man and that woman, once they come together and become one,
right,
to cultivate an environment whereby godly children can be raised. And that will solve all the problems we are seeing on this face of the earth. I'm telling you for sure. And I am very confident because what I speak is not my wisdom. It's the wisdom of God.
Right. So I want us to focus on what the residents were talking about there.
Yes.
And largely, concerning matters of finances, a huge number of them really talking about, even for the first one saying, hasla kama mimi, the girl child will come, probably, take what I've invested and all that. Really raises whole conversation on matters, finances. And this is, something I was asking you earlier, the whole formula, planning. So what should be decided before marriage and what should be decided either the first few years or probably even the first year of marriage so that you can ensure a long lasting. It's, for example, what you're probably having, when you're building an institution, let's say a school, you have, let's say, a vision and a mission, somewhat of a thing. Rehab, I'm curious on your point of view on this.
Yes.
Finances.
I think
should it be discussed before marriage, after marriage, and how should it be discussed? And should it even be discussed?
I think when we talk about family, it's not just about finance. The issues of families are broad. And
but then finances really forms a huge deal.
It does.
Because school fees imelipo, it surrounds finances. So I want us to focus on finances really. How much of a big deal does finances come into effect to kiongelea the commitment? When
we look at finance, then we will not be able to move. And that's why you are seeing even the young men, they are saying they're not able to. If you talk to many men, because we have been speaking, they are saying they're not in a position they marry because girls want this and that. So if we discuss about finance, then today there will be no families. And I will talk about ourselves, the way we got married. We were just casuals. We were working in the same company, and we were casuals. We were earning very little money. But when we realized that now we are friends and we need to start a family, let me say, we never discussed about finance. What we discussed is, are we able to stay together? Because when we come together, we will bring strengths. We will come together and some will bring what he has and what I have and we bring on the table. And I can say that when we married, I saw doors opening up. Some getting into the phase of business. He was employed. We decided that one of us, let one of us gets out. Some got out. He did business very well, you see. So if I was looking at what he had, I am very sure I would not have got married to him. I remember even my friends, they were telling me, Rehab, why are you getting to a man who is not even driving, somebody who does not even have money, who is...
Which year was this? I'm curious, before we take a short break, because we really need to take a short break. Which year was that?
That was 1997.
Wow.
1997, yes.
Okay. Pase, I know you're itching to dive into this conversation on finances. I am still curious. Should the whole conversation on finances be before the whole marriage, just after, a couple of months after deciding, so who's going to be paying rent, so who's going to be doing this, or after this couple, 27 years of marriage, saying, well, it doesn't really have to be all that. A huge factor in this. This particular conversation.